York City Marathon after 9/11, also running down by there. Also, the day of 9/11, running along in New Jersey on my way home because the bridges weren't open. Always carry my running clothes in my bag. 90s riots in LA, and running and seeing tanks and Marines and everything in the parking lots due to the riots and curfews. And the Boston Marathon, of course, being a Mets fan and not being allowed at first to step into the front of the line. Bermuda Marathon when I was 18 and a half years old, running the race, and during the race running for a few minutes with Greta Waits, who ran the 10K the day before. I was just running a training run during the marathon. Needless to say, she went far ahead of me. Also ran with a guy from Bermuda, first 15 miles. Everybody was cheering him, so it felt like they were cheering me. And of course, we got close to this place, and all of a sudden I look at the street sign, and it says Turtle Hill. I looked at him and said, "Please tell me that the name isn't what I think." And he goes, "Yep, hill, straight up." Very, very hilly course. Of course, my father, when he was there once before, he told me, "Oh, it's flat." So I was training for a flat. I never saw so many hills in my life. It rained that day, but my dad followed me along on a moped. Broke 4 hours. And although I didn't know it that night, next day at the airport, when I'm waiting, my dad was getting a drink for us, and we were in the group, and they came over and they handed me a trophy because I came in third in my age division and didn't even know it, so I didn't even go to the award ceremony. And I got to take that trophy on the plane because I was already checked everything, and everybody was coming over, the pilot, the stewardesses, and the woman next to me asked me for my autograph because she thought I was somebody famous. Of course, I may have ruined it when my dad and I ordered a drink, although we did have kosher meals, a special meal, and she thought we were getting special meals because of my running. That's it for now. Started running when I was 14 after playing basketball, baseball, and just about every other sport. A friend of mine at camp wanted to try out for the track team, so he asked me to run with him. I was waiting for my basketball game, so I went up there. We were running a half mile, and I ended up beating the kid by almost half a lap. And the track coach up there was a track coach of my high school that I was going to. For weeks, he tried to convince me to run. I'm like, "No, I'm a basketball player. Leave me alone." Anyway, I started to run, and as I say, the rest is history. Broke just about every freshman record in my high school, and eventually ran the mile, half mile, 2 mile, and did the long jump every weekend, plus cross country. Running in my first Boston Marathon, the day before in the park, we're doing a little warm-up, when all of a sudden I hear swish, 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 as a group of Kenyan runners go swishing by me. I feel like I was going in reverse. I now know what the top runners sound like. Swish. When I first started working at Ernst & Winnie I started working in 83, but in 84, I ran the New York City Marathon and was actually representing my firm. They actually had photographers following me around at the start of the race, so everyone thought I was actually someone famous. Also, as very well renowned, known at the New York City Marathon, which I ran my first one back in 78. The world's longest urinal was there, and in the world's longest urinal, while one time's peeing, someone sent a little paper sailboat down that everybody started shooting at. Just a little humor before the race. Biomechanically efficient. Business and marathon running. The focus, finishing things, working hard and late, remembering what it takes to get things done. Even when working hard, you gotta still get your runs in. Okay, don't forget all the animals and stuff that you've run into. Don't forget the bull chase you in the water. monkeys, all the other different animals, kangaroos, koala bears, and all the other stories, but the bull story in St. Kitts. LA riots, 1992, end of April into early May, and there I was in LA. I may have put this on already, but didn't want to forget. Boston Marathon, 2002, first time ever running Boston, amazing. First 7 to 8 miles all downhill, and a lot of it's uphill. Wesley Girls College, when you run by there, you have to hold your ears because they're screaming so loud. You high-five them, they even want to kiss you. I kept on running. Anyway, tough Heartbreak Hill. But boy, when you see that finish line, you see Fenway Park, and then you see the finish line, it's amazing. Boston 2007, not as much fun. Had a nor'easter, almost canceled the Boston Marathon because of it. Lots of good stories, including the one I mentioned earlier about being a Met fan, waiting online to go to the bathroom, and 4 or 5 women saying how great the weather was because it makes it more challenging. And I looked at them and I said, "You're nuts, running 26.2 miles is more than enough for being challenging." Wind, rain, however, it let up a little bit for the race. Coolest thing was, I was in the first row of the second heat, and literally for the first mile up a hill, I was like in second or third place, able to see over 12,000 runners chasing after me when I was on top of the hill. Needless to say that a lot of them passed me, but that's okay. Finished the race, ran it, and a lot of people didn't run it because of the rain and wind. Over the years, most of the races, I did marathons, but I also ran a lot of races for the New York Road Runners Club. If you ran 9 races, later on you qualified for running in New York for the following year. Used to run usually between 10 and 15 races a year, from 5Ks to half marathons to 20-mile runs, just to stay in shape and to eventually run the marathons. In the earlier years, very hard to get into New York City Marathon. It was by a different type of lottery. You had to get your apply for an application, and then when you got the application back, you immediately get it back in if you were the first ones to get it in. Therefore, one time I sat at a post office from about 3 o'clock in the afternoon till midnight when you were allowed to hand in your application, your request for an application, and then they mailed it back to you. Used to have it mailed to my grandmother's house in the city, besides for the island, because if she got it first, I would run into the city and get it back immediately. My dad, the first year, had to go downtown to the MAC, because you used to have to be a member of the Metropolitan Athletic Congress, and if you weren't a member, you couldn't apply. Each year, they changed the ways of entering, and now it's strictly on lottery, or if you run more than 9 races and volunteer for 1 race during the year. In addition to that, the last 5 New York City marathons, I ran for Fred's team, which was a charity. We raised money for children for Sloan's Kettering Cancer Center for kids. Even had Greta Waits as one of our members, and she spoke at a couple of our meetings after the races when we were done. We used to have a special finish line for us. We used to get to the starting line. Used to have put you up in a hotel, and used to run as a team. Greatest feeling was running past the Sloan Kettering Cancer Center around in the 60s on First Avenue, about mile 16 after you just came off the Queensboro Bridge, which is one of the most loudest places for running. It is so loud, the cheering when you come down. But anyway, by Sloan Kettering, high-fiving the kids outside as you run by. No matter how tired I was, no matter how exhausted, it gave you a lift for a few blocks. Unfortunately, you come back to reality and still had to run, almost another 10 miles, even though Central Park was to your left and only about a mile away. Had to still run uptown into the Bronx and back into Manhattan, so it was kind of tiring.